Have you ever looked at your spending and thought, I'm not reckless, so why does everything feel so expensive? You're not buying luxury cars, you're not shopping impulsively, you're not living irresponsibly. And yet every month feels tight, every purchase requires calculation, every expense feels like it's pushing against something. Here's the uncomfortable possibility. It's not your spending that's expensive, it's your structure. Most people don't live expensive lives because they overspend. They live expensive lives because they inherited a cost architecture they never questioned. The neighborhood you chose, the size of your home, the subscriptions that feel normal, the type of car considered standard. None of these feel dramatic, none of them feel luxurious. They just feel baseline. But baseline can be extremely expensive. Baseline can consume 80% of your income before you make a single discretionary choice. You can spend carefully inside an expensive structure and still feel broke. Because the issue isn't behavior, it's alignment. You're not overspending, you're overstructured. And once a life's architecture gets set, every decision after that happens inside it. You're optimizing within constraints you never consciously chose. So you optimize groceries, you cut small expenses, you try to be efficient with what remains. But the foundation never moved. The fixed costs stayed exactly where they were. And foundations decide how heavy life feels. If your life constantly feels expensive, even when you're being responsible, stay with me. Because what makes it expensive might not be what you're buying. It might be what you built around yourself without realizing it. Let's make this concrete. Imagine someone earning $5,800 per month. Not struggling, not wealthy, just stable. Rent in a normal area is $2,150, car payment and insurance is $780, utilities and internet is $420, groceries are $720, phone plans and subscriptions is $190, health insurance is $510. Before this person makes a single decision, $4,770 is already gone. That's 82% of income committed before lifestyle even begins. No luxury spending, no vacations, no extravagance, just baseline life. Your financial stress isn't created by purchases, it's created by commitments. Commitments feel harmless because they're spread out. They arrive on different dates. They don't feel connected. $2,150 feels like market rate. $780 feels like normal transportation. $720 feels like basic groceries. Individually, none of them feel dramatic. Together, they remove margin. Together, they leave almost no room for error. When 80% of your income is structurally locked, every small decision becomes emotionally amplified. Dinner out isn't $40, it's $40 inside a system with almost no flexibility. You don't feel irresponsible, you feel tight. You feel like you're doing everything right and still barely breathing. Because the pressure isn't coming from bad behavior, it's coming from architecture. And architecture doesn't change when you try harder. It doesn't shift when you optimize groceries or skip coffee. It changes when you question what you assumed was standard. Most people never do that. They optimize inside the cage, but they never examine the bars. They never ask if the cage itself is the problem. Here's the deeper layer. Most of your fixed costs weren't chosen from desire. They were chosen from expectation. The apartment that matches your career level, the car that feels appropriate for your age, the lifestyle that signals you're doing okay. This isn't about ego, it's about belonging. Humans don't just optimize for comfort, we optimize for social alignment, for not feeling like we're falling behind our reference group. If everyone around you lives in $2,000 to $2,500 apartments, $1,400 starts to feel like regression. If your peers drive new cars, owning a fully paid-off used car can feel like falling behind, even if it's financially superior. So you don't choose what's aligned with your margin, you choose what's aligned with your environment. And environments are expensive. They set expectations that become invisible over time. Here's the dangerous detail. You can grow your income 15%, 20%, even 30% and still feel tight if your structure grows with it. Your reference point expands automatically. Your baseline adjusts upward without conscious decision. Your life doesn't feel expensive because you're irresponsible. It feels expensive because your architecture was built around an identity. And once those standards lock in, they stop being choices and start being assumptions. You stop asking, do I want this? You start asking, how do I sustain this? That shift is everything. Because sustaining a structure requires constant income. It requires you to keep earning at the same level or higher forever. But choosing a structure requires clarity. It requires examining what actually matters versus what just feels expected. And clarity is uncomfortable, which is why most people never redesign their life even when it quietly exhausts them. Here's the moment that confuses almost everyone who's ever gotten a raise. You increase your income from $5,800 to $7,200 per month. You expect relief. You expect the tightness to disappear. Instead, relief lasts about 6 weeks. Then the structure expands to fill the new capacity. You move to a slightly better apartment, $2,450 instead of $2,150. You upgrade the car. Payment increases from $780 to $950. You say yes to a few things you previously avoided. Nothing reckless, just upgrades that feel proportional. Within months, your fixed structure sits at 60-50. You're earning more, objectively making progress, but your margin almost identical to before, sometimes even smaller because the upgrades felt justified. This is the part nobody talks about. Most people don't struggle because they earn too little. They struggle because their architecture expands automatically without conscious design. Income rises, identity expands to match it, commitments lock in at the new level. And once fixed costs rise, they rarely shrink. They become the new baseline. That's why extra income doesn't feel like freedom. It feels like capacity, like permission to take on slightly more weight. The problem isn't ambition, it's automatic expansion. Architecture growing faster than clarity about what actually matters. Because when structure grows faster than intention, life keeps feeling expensive even when the numbers look good. There's another layer hiding under all this: convenience. Modern life is designed to remove friction. Food delivered instead of cooked, streaming services instead of sharing, monthly subscriptions for everything instead of ownership, automatic renewals instead of conscious choices. Individually, each one saves time. Collectively, they raise the floor of what your life requires to function. Two people earn $6,500 per month, same income, similar situations. Person A cooks most meals, owns a paid-off car, shares subscriptions with family. Person B orders delivery 3 times a week, leases a car, subscribes to premium everything. Neither feels extravagant, but Person A's fixed commitments sit around $4,200. Person B's sit around $5,600. Not because they're reckless, but because convenience layered over time. That $1,400 difference isn't luxury. It's small decisions that felt harmless individually, but compounded into structure. $18 here for delivery, $32 there for a subscription you barely use, $79 auto-renewed quietly without you noticing. Convenience feels harmless because it arrives in small amounts, but convenience compounds into structure, and structure determines whether you feel light or tight. This isn't about guilt. Convenience is valuable. But when convenience becomes default, when it happens automatically without conscious choice, you're no longer choosing it, you're financing it. And financed comfort doesn't feel like comfort, it feels like obligation, another fixed cost that must be maintained every month.
Here's the uncomfortable question that reveals everything. If your income stopped increasing tomorrow, could your life remain stable without stress? Not survive, not scrape by, remain calm. If the honest answer is no, your life isn't expensive because you overspend. It's expensive because your structure has no elasticity. When 85% of your income is structurally committed, even small shifts feel threatening. That's when money stops being neutral. That's when finances become psychologically heavy. You don't just worry about bills, you worry about lifestyle regression, about what downsizing signals about your trajectory. You worry about what it says about you. That's why redesigning structure feels scary, because it isn't just financial, it's identity. Reducing costs can feel like shrinking identity. Driving something simpler can feel like signaling failure, even when it creates margin. And so people protect architecture more fiercely than they protect margin. They defend their structure even when it exhausts them. But here's the truth. A life that costs more than your nervous system can calmly support will always feel expensive, even if you can afford it mathematically. Because affordability isn't about numbers, it's about how much tension the structure requires you to carry. And tension, over time, is the most expensive cost of all. It drains energy, fragments attention, makes everything feel heavier than it should. Here's the mistake most people make when they realize their life feels expensive. They assume the only solution is downgrade, smaller place, older car, cut everything. But shrinking your life isn't the same as redesigning it. Restriction isn't the same as intention. Instead of asking, what do I have to remove, which creates resistance, ask, what actually matters enough to stay, which creates clarity. Because not every cost is heavy. Some expenses bring genuine value, connection, meaning. Others just stayed because they were never questioned. They became automatic, invisible, assumed. Reclaiming margin isn't about becoming minimalist overnight. It's about making your architecture conscious again, seeing the structure clearly instead of operating inside it blindly. When you consciously choose what remains fixed, the rest becomes flexible. And flexibility is what makes a life feel lighter, not lower, spacious, not restricted. Here's a simple test. If your income dropped 15% tomorrow, what would actually change? Imagine you earn $8,000 per month. A 15% drop means losing $1,200. If your fixed structure sits at $7,400, that drop creates panic instantly. If your fixed structure sits at $5,900, that same drop creates inconvenience, not fear. Same income, same drop, different architecture, completely different emotional experience. That's elasticity, the difference between a structure that bends and one that breaks. And elasticity doesn't just protect you from loss, it changes how you feel during stability. When your structure has room, you stop scanning for threats. You stop feeling one surprise away from tension. That's why some people earning $4,500 feel calmer than people earning $12,000. It's not income, it's the relationship between what you earn and what you've committed. Here's what most people don't expect when they finally create margin. It feels strange, almost empty, almost wrong. Because for years, your life ran at 92% capacity. Every dollar had a destination. Now it runs at 70%. There's room, there's breathing space. And your nervous system doesn't know what to do with the silence. You check your account less. There's no urgent need to monitor. You don't feel the familiar activation that came with tight margins. That low-level stress that you mistook for productivity isn't there anymore. At first, it can feel like you're underperforming, like you're not trying hard enough, because you've been conditioned to equate tension with productivity. But space is not laziness. Space is power stored, capacity held in reserve instead of constantly deployed. It's what allows you to make decisions without pressure distorting them. It's what lets opportunities be evaluated instead of grabbed impulsively. It's what lets you sleep without running financial calculations at midnight. Most people don't need another income strategy. They don't need another side hustle or optimization hack. They need permission to stop building lives that require constant compression. And once you allow space to exist, something unexpected happens. You don't slow down, you clarify. Decisions become intentional instead of reactive. Goals become chosen instead of inherited. The urgency fades, and what remains isn't emptiness, it's precision. You stop optimizing for survival and start designing for alignment. And alignment over time is what turns a heavy life into a sustainable one. Let me show you what changes when structure stops demanding constant attention. It's a Saturday morning, you wake up and your first thought isn't logistical, not what's due, not what did I forget, just quiet. It's someone suggesting dinner out and you say yes without mentally calculating whether the month can absorb it. Not because you're rich, because the margin exists. It's a surprise expense, a car repair, a medical bill, and feeling inconvenience instead of panic. That shift from panic to inconvenience is worth more than any salary increase. It's checking your bank account once a week out of routine, not out of anxiety. The number isn't dramatic, it's just predictable. and predictable feels like peace. None of this looks impressive from the outside. No one photographs margin. No one celebrates the absence of dread. But internally, everything operates under different rules. You stop interpreting every expense as risk. You start seeing purchases as choices. You stop bracing for the next surprise. You start trusting the structure to hold. And something shifts in how you think about money entirely. You stop chasing more. You stop believing that higher income alone will solve the feeling. You start valuing margin as much as growth, flexibility as much as income. Because you finally understand, the goal was never to earn enough to outrun the structure. The goal was to build a structure that doesn't require running. That's the difference between a life that looks expensive and a life that feels expensive. One is a choice, the other is a trap, and you get to decide which one you're living in. Here's the truth that changes everything once you really understand it. Your life doesn't feel expensive because you spend too much. It feels expensive because it requires too much tension to maintain. Expensive isn't a number, it's a psychological nervous system state, the emotional weight of keeping everything functioning. If your structure requires constant optimization, constant calculation, constant vigilance, you will feel financial pressure even at high income levels. But if your structure contains margin, elasticity, and space, your life can feel light even before your income changes. Stop asking, how can I earn more to support this life? Start asking, how can I design a life that doesn't demand so much to begin with? Because the real upgrade isn't luxury, it's calm. Knowing that if something shifts, you bend, you don't break. It's waking up without scanning for threats, making decisions from preference instead of pressure. And once you experience that, you stop chasing income as emotional security. You start building security into the architecture itself, designing for calm instead of optimizing for capacity. If this video changed the way you see expensive, subscribe, not for tips, not for hacks, for clarity, the kind of understanding that actually changes decisions instead of just adding more information. Because once you understand structure, you stop fighting your finances and start designing them. And that's when wealth stops feeling heavy, when money stops being a source of constant tension and starts feeling quiet. When your financial life becomes something that supports you instead of something you have to constantly support.